Hello and welcome to LA1 TV. You might have seen in the last few days, this video got posted. It's garnered a lot of attention on social media, but what do Lancaster students really think? So have you seen the video or clips of it about Reform Society members struggling to date on campus?
I have, yes, very much.
And what were your initial kind of reactions to that video?
My initial reaction was to sort of say, just because you are having these issues doesn't mean that you need to go around spreading hate and sort of harmful incentives. It makes me so angry.
I'm all for freedom of expression. I'm all for freedom of political belief, but it is a bit ridiculous I think, for students to have those sorts of views, and also for students to support reform more generally, because I don't think their policies are student-friendly.
Have you heard about the video that's been circulating about Reform voters and the Reform Society on campus recently?
So I've not really kept much into it. I know there's some stuff going around about it, and sort of their views made quite clear a lot of the time in comment sections on a lot of different pages.
It was funny. It was just funny, to be honest. I don't know, I'm very interested in politics, and watching it was a lot of sort of back and forth, and it was just a funny watch, to be honest. Yeah. I'm also in the Politics Society, which is where the video was first posted, and everyone was having a nice civil discussion about it, and no one made fun of it at all. Everyone was really, we all made fun of it for 5 minutes. And it was just sort of, it was just kind of like, it's just a great watch. That's all I can say. It's just entertaining, and it's just sort of like, you can politically engage with the ideas, but it's more just a laugh.
Do you think the Reform Society should be allowed on campus? Do you think it's welcome on campus?
I don't think it's welcome on campus. I think it probably should be allowed on campus. Mm-hmm. I don't think we should be banning societies just because we don't like them.
I think it should definitely be allowed to exist, in the sense that if you were to get rid of one political society, then you kind of have to get rid of all of them, otherwise you're being a bit hypocritical.
Yeah. I absolutely think it should exist. I see no problem with a society existing in which can encompass a group of people. I'd only see problem if that resulted in anything other than civility.
Yeah.
Not by me. It's not welcome by me. A lot of people I know think it shouldn't be allowed. I've seen a petition for it to be stopped. At the end of the day, it's freedom of speech, everything, but it's just when it gets to the point where they're spreading that much hate and they're trying to force it on people, that's when it becomes a problem.
Like I said, I'm all for freedom of expression. However, I don't think it'll be welcomed. Do you know what I mean? I don't think people will welcome that sort of thing, given the nasty beliefs they have. Do you know what I mean? People aren't going to be here for that.
Yeah. So the Reform Society is actually endorsed by the Reform Party. Do you think political parties should be endorsing and supporting student societies, or do you think it should be entirely student-led?
I think you can't really have a political society that calls themselves the Labour Society or the Conservative Society and expect it not to be endorsed by the party themselves. I think that's common practice, maybe. So sure, why not?
I don't really care, to be honest. I mean, multiple groups do. I think it becomes a problem when the societies ultimately wind up just filtering young and uninformed kids directly into a party. I know the RCP do it as well. Reform will wind up doing it. It's just sort of, it's a bit weird, but I don't think it's the end of the world, really. I don't care that much.
I think that is a bit of a difficult one, where it is the case, once again going the same thing about not wanting to be hypocritical about it. There are a variety of, not even just political societies, but societies in general that are, affiliated with various groups. I guess the main issue would more be, not so much from the university's perspective, but more thinking about politically in general, how good of an idea it is, political groups basically being able to, use university as sort of a way to recruit people, almost. So I guess that would be the only sort of, issue with that. But I don't think the university should, prevent groups like that if they're affiliated with anybody. So.
It's a moral issue, but it's not one that the group here that's not their moral obligation. It's the moral obligation of the Reform Party itself to consider okay, we're funding this, but how much of a lenience do we have in terms of indoctrination? Because there is that moral boundary it crosses. I don't think it's too much of a problem. I mean, it's kind of the same thing as if a Labour Party, Green Party endorsed the representative here.
Yeah,
it
completely.
Wouldn't be a problem, only if that was used as a term of indoctrination, even if it is a political wing, which I agree with. Indoctrination is not the way.
See, I really want to say no. It is a political society, so obviously there needs to be politics involved. That, I don't know, that just seems like a lot, and it could get quite dangerous, if you know what I mean.
Some of the members have claimed that there is a woke ideology on campus that they've, I think the term was, exposed. What do you think he means by a woke ideology? Because I think it's a term that's very loosely defined.
If I'm honest, I don't use social media, so this all is nonsense to me, what everyone else says.
Would you say there is a woke ideology on campus? Have you experienced this alleged woke ideology?
I just find the phrasing a little bit silly, because it's like, what sort of counts as woke? Does university courses happening to have content on it that discusses certain topics make it woke? Does having certain people on campus and allowing them to feel welcomed make it woke? I sort of just like the new way of complaining about like political correctness or whatever. It just doesn't seem like a very substantive thing to be able to say yes there is or no there isn't.
To be woke is to be aware of what the current problems in society are. People using that as a weaponization is restricting and taking away from the fact of we need to be aware of what's currently going on in our community. So I think, yes, we should be woke. I don't see a problem with that. And I don't think that's a particular issue with them saying, oh, there's a woke agenda on campus, because it's not a problem. But they're weaponizing it, which I think is the problem with that.
No, I think it's just that people are allowed to be who they are, and that makes a certain group of people very upset. People are just open-minded. People are more accepting.
Okay.
Well, I think I wouldn't use the term woke ideology because I'm not 45 and divorced, but I think what you need to think about is what you did see in the video was a lot of people going like, no, these people shouldn't be allowed on campus no matter what. We should completely kick them off because they're hateful. And I think, personally, I'm a big believer in the filter of debate and that open discussion should be allowed on campus. So I don't really know if you can blame it on the society because, the re-affiliation of the society, I don't think we know if it's been allowed yet or not. I think it will. And I think that shows that it's not really a top-down woke ideology. It's just sort of young people are more sort of socially liberal, so it's people are less welcome to those kind of beliefs. I don't think it's like a campus thing, really.
I don't think there's a woke ideology on campus. Well, I mean, like, there could be. Like, I feel like that, what is woke? Like, I feel like that's, you could say it's like a liberal, left-leaning ideology sort of phrase. And yeah, that does exist on campus, rightly so, because those policies are what students should be expecting from the government. Those are policies that look after student welfare, that look after cost of living, whatever. So if you want to categorize that as woke, then yeah, there's a woke, thing happening.
A large part of that interview focused on these Reform Society members struggling to date and make relationships on campus. Why do you think that would be?
I feel like people don't want to align themselves with that sort of energy, to be honest with you. I think it's low-key. If anything, it's a turn-off. But also, like, who cares? Do you know what I mean? Like, who cares?
Well, I don't know if the sort of geography of the Northwest is making it particularly difficult for Reform voters, but I think it's more outwardly, certain members, I'm not going to name names, so I'm not liable of slander, certain members have already been accused of certain things, and I'm not going to say anything beyond that, but, that's not helping them from the off. In general, when you're that outward about your stated political beliefs and they are so bad, when they're so bad, you need to think realistically they aren't going to mesh properly. I know in the video they sort of blame the woke left for their inability to get women. Ultimately, what it comes down to is a lot of their beliefs are directly opposed to civil rights, which is something women often care more about, which I think is going to hinder their success.
A lot of them are coming out there with very extreme stances on numerous different things. And a lot of those generally fall under the umbrella of, like, human rights, which a lot of their views can be considered controversial to a number of people. And I think one of those main things is women's rights in particular, and how they seem to agree with a lot of things that probably set us back a decent amount of time when it comes to actually progressing in women's rights.
Younger people in general, I think, tend to lean more left-wing. And I think particularly with Lancaster, I think with their area, I'm not sure about actually what the results of this election was, but I know previously it was Green. So I think there might be more people who are typically lean more left-wing who are drawn to Lancaster in particular. And I think that's just values and stuff like that. I think it's just that a lot of people, find important when it comes to, making friends, having relationships and stuff like that. So some people just might not be able to get past that, I think.
Yeah. Politics has a lot of weight on the world as it is, and some people, when it comes to finding relationships, can't see past a political viewpoint. To have a political viewpoint that differs from your partner, it can be extremely difficult. If you're both mature enough to be able to discuss that without it resulting in an argument, then it can succeed. But the trouble is maturity to a degree.
Because they're very close-minded people, and a lot of other people these days are open-minded, and when they're trying to put people down, people don't want to be around them.
The same person claimed that men are afraid to approach women because you can say hello to a woman and they'll blow it out of proportion. Do you agree with this?
They're afraid to say hi to women because women are going to blow it out of proportion.
That was the quote, yes.
No, that's stupid.
I think that's ridiculous, personally.
What are your thoughts on this statement in general?
I think it reflects sort of a broader issue with the ideology of young men raised on sort of the right side of the political spectrum and sort of their ignorant nature. They literally talk in the video about how they don't approach women. They're making it up. If we're being honest with ourselves, they're too scared to speak to women in the first place.
I have not found this to be the case.
Mm-hmm.
There is kind of a point there, in the sense that women are very nervous as to being approached by men for valid reasons and completely understandable reasons.
It's a lot more of just they feel like there's this sort of mass anti-male issue which doesn't really exist.
It's difficult to reason with fear because it comes from both sides. Both are fairly understandable. Women have dealt with oppression for a very long time. They've dealt with horrific things done to them just as a generalisation of their side of the gender spectrum. And in return, some men have received some undue justice to them in which has been unfair. But it's hard to say what balance the scales go.
I just think that's really silly.
The same member claimed that he thinks the reason reform appeals to younger men is that it includes them. Firstly, would you define yourself as a man?
Yes.
Okay. Would you say reform appeals to you particularly?
No, it does not.
Do you feel unincluded by other political parties?
I don't know. I've not thought about this.
Would you define yourself as a man?
Yes, I would.
Would you say reform appeals to you particularly?
Absolutely not.
Do you feel unincluded by other political parties and ideologies?
No, I don't feel unincluded. I feel very included by other political ideologies.
Okay. Would either of you define yourself as a man?
I would.
You would? Okay. Does reform appeal to you personally?
Not really.
Okay. And do you feel unincluded by other political parties?
Yeah, but that's more to the fact that I'm trans rather than anything else, rather than specifically me being a man. I think a lot of people are having an issue in general where they don't feel like politics, is representing them or connecting with the issues that they care about. I don't believe that the things that reform suggests would actually help particularly much, but I think a lot of people are like the fact that it sounds like they're trying to do something and they care about those kinds of things.
The trouble that I see is that political parties don't make a direct statement to involve young men or some people in general, because the fact is they're already involved. The readdress of the equality line is to make sure that everybody is on an equal standpoint, to try and readdress somebody that's already standing higher than everybody else. While it is important to make sure they're not forgotten, it's not important enough that they should be at the top of the priority list.
Yes, I would, yeah.
Does reform appeal to you particularly?
Well, no, but I don't think that's not really what they mean by appeals to younger men. They're talking about how they feel isolated by other sort of parties, and because of that they're drawn to reform. What they actually mean is they've sort of lived with this privilege their whole lives, and it's getting leveled just a bit more than they'd like it to be. So they want to go for a party that will, scooch them right back up, and I think that's sort of more where the problems come in.
Well, that ties in perfectly to my next question, actually. The same member is quoted as saying, the left is focused on putting men down and putting women on top. Do you feel put down as a man in left-leaning spaces?
Always. No, I don't. No, it's not. No, no, not really.
No, you don't? So you wouldn't say that women are elevated above men?
Well, no, because they're not. I don't know. I don't really have a long thought-out explanation. It's just sort of not true. So no.
It's been the right wing that has been, propping up a lot of women politicians in the last few years. There was, Liz Truss, Theresa May. If anything, it has been the right wing recently that has had a lot more visible women in politics, more so than the left, actually. Mm-hmm. Also, there's the fact that women are 50% of the population. Like, if you want to create a country that works for everyone, you want to have a politics that works for everyone, that does mean you have to consider women's issues and men's issues. Mm-hmm.
Do you feel elevated as a woman in left-leaning spaces over men in particular?
No, not at all. We're fighting to be equal. We're not fighting to be on top. That's something that a lot of people in those groups don't understand. And because they're so privileged in their positions, they don't want that privilege taken away. It's not that we're trying to put them down, it's just that we want to be on the same level.
The Society founder stated that people struggle to separate politics and friendships. What's your kind of take on that? Would you personally consider breaking off a friendship or not pursuing one if you found out that someone's political ideas didn't match up with your own?
I think it depends in what way. In the sense, I've dated people before who had very different political views to me, and that was something that definitely introduced tension at times. But certainly it wasn't something that was insurmountable or anything. My only issue would be if somebody was actively hateful, then I wouldn't be able to, because that's a situation of, values just not aligning to such a degree that I would struggle to have a friendship or a relationship or anything like that with them.
I've got friends both here in England and over in the United States that share all sides of the political spectrum, and I have no problem maintaining friendships with them, because realistically they are for specific parts of the politics in which they represent because it is beneficial to them and they think that it will better humanity. But we can all safely agree, no matter the particular political direction, that the most hateful parts, the parts which reasonably are the worst, in which are in some cases used to oppress and kill people like me, like Ethan, we can agree that they are the worst parts and should not be justified in any way, shape or form.
It's very difficult to bring up politics in those sorts of spaces and relationships. My parents always say don't bring up politics at the dinner table, sort of thing. It has its time and place. So I feel that if you're someone who believes that your political beliefs are going to upset other people, then it's best not to upset the people that are closest to you. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
What are your thoughts on sort of forming friendships around political ideas? If you were friends with someone and they had differing political beliefs to you, how would that affect your personal relationships with them?
To a point. I think it's a good thing to be friends with people who have different ideas than you, because you're never going to break out of your own kind of, I don't want to say prejudices, but it feels like the right kind of word to use, where you strongly believe in one idea. You're never going to be able to challenge that if you just surround yourself with people who have the exact same idea as you. But at the same time, I think there's a certain line that it comes to where if you cross that line, you can't really be as close with them as before. So, for example, if you're, quite a strong believer that everyone deserves the same rights, everyone deserves a right to healthcare, housing, all that kind of stuff. If you believe that, and then somebody comes to you and says, no, the only way for people to live is to work in a very strict system where you are purely surviving based on how much you contribute to the system, I don't think that's entirely fair. I personally have had friendships that have ended because they've had some more extreme views, and there's a certain line, definitely, but overall I don't think you should completely lock down friendships based on the fact that, oh, maybe they voted for someone different to me.
No, I don't think this is true. I don't know if I have the same political beliefs as a lot of my friends. I don't generally ask them about their political beliefs.
So you don't think that people in general would kind of avoid a friendship or cut one off due to political differences?
Personally, wouldn't. I don't know how many other people would.
No, absolutely not. I don't think it's any of my business unless they are political ideologies that like encroach on my liberties and my ability to live my life the way I want it to be. Then I wouldn't associate myself, and that person is out of my company. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But besides that, I don't really take it that seriously. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I will say about reform. In the recent local elections across the country, they obviously landslide, like Lancaster lost, the Lancaster Council lost to reform. I feel like that, at least for me, and I feel like a lot of people actually, it was really unexpected. And from that, like, we have to now assume, students, that this party is no longer a fringe issue party. It's not just, okay, we're an immigration populist party. No, this is a party that needs to be taken seriously now. And I think the left, in all spaces, whether that be students, all the way up to labor, they need to take this threat more seriously, and they need to understand what this political shift means and how it threatens left spaces.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview with us. I hope you enjoy the nice weather. And yeah, this video should be posted hopefully over the next few days. Thank you so much for doing this interview.
No worries, thank you.
I think it depends on the political difference and how it sort of broader reflects itself in the person. I mean, I'm friends with multiple conservatives because, you know, politics, society, you've got people from broadly across the spectrum. A lot of them are, nice people, and I think a lot of the times you can ignore that political bias. But it gets to a point where when your political beliefs is basically, in essence, boiled down, I don't like brown people. I'm not sure if I can really be friends with you anymore on that grounds, because what you're doing is ultimately racist as opposed to, a political belief. Which, I think most people can be friends across the spectrum. I know some people can't.
Definitely if they voted reform, because as a woman and as a queer woman, they might not agree with my right to exist. So that would definitely alter a friendship for me. At the end of the day, I'm very much, people can, freedom of speech, people can have their own opinions, but when it comes to debating your right to exist, that's different, and it should be taken more seriously. But yeah, I would probably talk with the person first.
So there you have it, the thoughts of some real Lancaster students about that recent viral video. If you've got any opinions and ideas, do remember to leave them in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more LA1 TV content.
Left and right, especially on campus and all that, does make dating difficult in my opinion. Especially on hinge profiles, you've got your political views, you put like...
It's probably just ugly, that's why. But
anything far right, they look at you differently. One over here, I mean,